Hey, gun people or horse people, I might post this on both channels. This is my rope halter for my horse, and Buddy was chewing on it, and he chewed off the damn end when he was being a bad boy. I put this little whipping on the end. Now, if you cut this off when you put the whipping, this spreading action doesn't help keep the whipping on, so it'll come off. So I recommend to kind of fray this a little bit before you put on a whipping. You don't have to. You can put the whipping on and then cut it, but the smoother it is, the easier it is for the whipping to come off. So if I wanted to snap this one piece right over the edge of this, I probably could, and then I would lose the whole whipping. So on this one, it's kind of frayed enough to where when I put this on, and I didn't have a red, I had this blue line, so we'll use the blue. So on whipping, it's basically, it's kind of like if you know how to make an old hangman noose. You just get this little loop here is going to be where you're going to finish. Now, if I wrap it this way, when I finish it, I'm going to slide this through here on my last loop, and then I'm going to pull this line here, and it's going to tighten it, and it creates force, and then I'll cut it. Since your last loop is most likely to be looser, I like to put it on top, not where it's holding. So instead of doing this way, I'm going to do it the opposite way. And I'm going to make my loop up top so I'm finishing here. And this first loop is probably the most important because you want to make sure it's really tight. So you go over the rope here and you really want to get this as tight as you can. Go over it again so it makes this little cross mark, and then on each wrap you want to crank this down as much as you can. The tighter it is, the better. And how many loops you put is up to you. 4 or 5 is probably good. I want to make sure they're nice and tight. I know my gun people will have comments about that. My horse people will be, what are you talking about? Alright. Good and tight. Each wrap I'm making it tighter and tighter. This is almost going to be like rock. So now my last wrap, remember that little loop I told you you're going to go through? What's going to happen is when I pull on this rope, it's going to pull this down and lock it into place. So I want to make sure this last loop is tight, and then I'm going to go through my little locking hole like so. Hopefully you can see that. And so now when I pull this down, it's going to be tight. But before I do it, I want to again get this as tight as I can. And then this is going to pull this down when I pull. And if it's really tight, it'll be hard to pull. And you notice it creates that little block right there. This is an old whipping action. They used to do this on all ropes. And I'm going to pull this almost to where it's underneath. Pulling it and trying to keep it in camera. Oh, there. So you see it's created this nice binding knot right there. So when I cut this piece off, and I'm going to cut it off so I can still burn it, there's a little bit of burning action right there that I want to burn, and I'm going to melt that. I don't have a lighter up here, or my little torch. Basically, I'm just going to hold a little lighter to that and melt that, and that's going to make a ball so it's not going to back out. And then on this one, it doesn't matter if it goes in. If I want to do it right, I'll cut it and I'll melt it a little bit. And that way these two knots won't go back in. But on the bottom, since this rarely ever loosens out, I just usually cut this off and let it go back in. And I don't bother melting that. And now, this is going to stop this fraying. It'll give me a little weight. I don't like, some people will just put a knot to stop this. and then you get this big heavy knot down here. It doesn't hold as well, and it's not as good. This is a better way. It looks like I went 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, almost 6. If you count here, it's 5. You count here, it's 6. And that is how you whip a rope. I'm going to cut this part off. And this is pretty handy. When I was a rappel master in the military, so I used to teach rappelling, and all of our ropes, everybody had to learn how to whip their own rope, how to repair a rope, if you had to cut it and whip it in the field, etc. So these knots are always kind of handy to me. Rappelling teaches you a lot of good knots. And that is how you whip the end of a rope. And now I fix Buddy's rope. And if he chews on it this time, I'm going to knock his teeth out. Right now all my horse people are like, you better not hit that horse. He's a good horse. He loves you. Oh, be quiet. He don't get beaten enough. That's his problem. Damn crazy mule. Needs to be beat like a redheaded stepchild. And I'm too nice to him. Alright, we'll end that there on whipping.